We are back in the black hole of real estate, and I can see that we're going to spend a lot more time talking about NAR, the settlement, and how it's going to play out than I might have imagined in the beginning. This is Ron Wojciechowski, your host for the black hole of real estate. And today, what I want to do is I want to speak out to the consumers that are buying and selling homes and using agents, those that aren't using agents, and I'm absolutely speaking to those people that have real estate sales licenses. We really have a duty right now, and that's to make sure that since there's this new conditions and new forms that are going to happen right now to educate and inform and safely guide those that we serve through this process. And I think it's simple to say that historically, most times a buyer has paid through the sales price the commission that goes eventually to the agent that represents them. So let me walk that backwards. When a purchase price is made, and let's just say it's $300,000, and there's a certain amount of commission in there that's split between two brokerages, that $300,000 is a price that takes into account some of it is going to real estate brokers. So if that price of $300,000 did not have any real estate brokers involved, if you netted that money out of there, maybe the price was lower, $280,000, $290,000, somewhere in between. I'll let you do the math on that, but it'll be lower. So it's baked in the cake. The commission is baked in there, and when the buyer pays $300,000 with their money or the bank's money or a combination of it, that's the money that facilitates the rest of the payments in the transaction. So it's been done historically. Now, what's different is the buyer is still going to offer a certain amount of money. They could pay their buyer broker right from their own pocket. They can do that. They can also right now have a form or an addendum, and it's about the commission where it allows the seller to pay that concession at closing, the same way they might pay closing cost concessions. It's been in the works for months, and I think what you'll find is most state boards and their forms are going to say, hey, if there's a $300,000 purchase price, a certain amount of money can be used for closing costs and prepaid items for finance deals, and you'll see all different percentages based on if it's FHA or VA, and anywhere from 3 to 6%. I think VA is 4. So these are things that are very common. Now, the way it was set up with lending, that was the max concession that could go in there. So they had to do something a little bit different for sales commission, and they're in the process of completing this as we speak, where there's going to say that you can, separate from the credits that go into the lending piece, also facilitate a concession to pay for brokers. Now, not everybody's going to use this, but it is something that's being worked out in the languages with most contracts and states, and I know most brokerages are also working through what the paperwork is going to look like. So there's a way to do it. Now, what I'm not recommending to anybody is to play, the game of where's the commission, and there's all these creative ways to disguise it in a price or put it in a hidden feature or just, I don't know, make a game out of it where if you look closely enough at this picture, you'll see what the commission is. So we as an industry need to be better than trying to skirt around the rules or play games with this. And I hope that for the consumer's sake that the word gets out very, very quickly that we just need to play with the rules that are in place. The change is not dramatic. It's always been funded through the transaction, mainly through the buyer's money in the purchase price, and then it gets distributed. So as I mentioned this, the flow of money, what's different is there's a couple different pieces of paper in there, but the flow of money doesn't change dramatically. Now, if you're a seller and you think this is your green light to not pay any commission, you've always been able to do that. You've never had to pay a commission. You can sell it yourself. You could just pay a listing agent, or you could just stick it on a flat fee service. Some people have no listing agent, put it on flat fee, but offer a commission to buyer brokerages. There's any combination of that with any pricing involved. So that hasn't changed. So if you suddenly feel that you don't want to pay that, okay. But historically, anytime there has not been some financial incentive for a brokerage buyer's agent to work for days, weeks, or months, or whatever on behalf of someone for no compensation, you're not likely to get representation that lasts very long, or perhaps quality representation unless somebody has the time, energy, and desire to work for nothing in perpetuity, I believe that you're going to get a less skilled agent, or perhaps somebody who barely does it, maybe just a friend. And I'm not saying that's bad or wrong, but the pool of agents that you're going to work with is going to be smaller as well. So if there's less agents marketing properties to buyers to show them to, and there's less incentive or no incentive for an agent to show your listing, then you've got a situation that's got to be overcome. And with the buyer-broker agreements, for me, it might be as simple as saying, okay, so on this particular one, our agreement says that we'll receive this. Great. We'll ask the seller to pay for it. That's one way to do it. Another one is that I don't have any agreement with you, or it just says zero. And then, so here's the difference what you're going to have to make up. I think it gets a little convoluted really, really fast, since any buyer with wanting representation from an agent is going to have a buyer brokerage agreement. That just becomes fair market. If it's a skilled agent, they probably get a little higher fee. If it's a less skilled agent or newer or a hungry or highly incentivized agent, they may have a smaller fee. And we don't have to go down the rabbit hole of, well, do you want a cheap attorney or an expensive attorney? I think we're past that. And sure, you can make a case that you get what you pay for, but I've been places where I paid a lot of money and not necessarily got what I was looking for either. So I think there's research to be done. I think that more than ever, consumers will look at online reviews. They'll look at track record and reputation. They'll find the agents that are able to overcome difficult situations and overcome problems. I think that will happen. I also feel that agents will be a little more choosy who they work with to make sure that there is a good match, whether it's down to their core values or the way that they work or the times and places that they work. And I think ultimately you're probably going to get a better match between the buyer or seller and the agent they choose to work with because of this little vetting process that's going to, in my opinion, happen organically. It's just going to take place. The other thing I would mention is, and we'll use the attorney example, if you walked into an attorney's office, had a consultation at the end, they would have an engagement letter, right? And it's going to talk about the services offered and the price paid, that fee. So if the person that was in there for the consultation chose not to sign it, the lawyer simply wouldn't represent them. Could they negotiate the fee? Perhaps. Maybe the attorney sets my fee and that's take it or leave it. But that's no different than any other sales proposition. We've done the same thing buying cars and jewelry and all kinds of things. Sometimes the price is fixed in such a way that it's inflexible, not price fixing, but just that's the fee. That's okay. It's always negotiable, but it doesn't predict or say what the outcome has to be. You can negotiate with that, but if they won't move on price, they won't move. If we get past all of that, because it's complicated and it's uncomfortable for many people, I believe that we're just going to find that if everybody has to have an engagement letter, whether it's an attorney or a realtor or anything in between, it'll become very customary to have them in place. You see the vast majority of sellers have a listing agreement. Very few buyers have buyer's agreements, if you will. And I think once we overcome that, why do I have one when I'm selling my house, but I'm working with the very same agent and I don't have one to buy it? I think that'll resolve itself really quickly. If everybody has to do it, it'll just get done. And I think people will gain comfort because they're already doing it on the sales side. It's not a drastic change. It shouldn't be. But I want to make sure that we're having time to really let this sink in. My biggest concern is just seeing, some of the writings and sayings out there about how we don't like this or don't want to do it or how we're going to avoid it or work around, these workarounds. I'm like, man, I really hope if you're an agent who's thinking of doing a workaround and you're hearing this right now or trying to avoid it or skirt the issue, I'm like, it is probably so much easier to just surrender to the fact that this is going to happen. And the rules that are in place will be leveling the playing field fair and equal for everybody. And I think if we just did it, it'd be relatively simple and easier on everybody. And it doesn't have to change the way the industry is run. It changes maybe the sequencing and maybe a little bit of the paperwork, but in essence, it's not changing all that much. And as much as I don't want to keep going on about this week after week, because I'm noticing on different social media sites and hearing it in daily real estate practice, I realize that there's absolutely a need right now for the type of message that's being delivered here today. So I hope this is helping you. And at this point, I guess I'm committed to talking about this for as many episodes as it takes until us as an industry and a community are able to move through this safely together and have the practice of buying and selling homes be relatively easy and feel normal. This is Ron Weiss-Sikarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.